It's crazy to think Marvel's Phase 4 already consists of 13 projects over the course of only 2 years, with a combination of theatrical films and Disney Plus series. This is already more content than we got in all of Phase 3. However, unlike Phase 3, the reception to Phase 4 has been a lot more mixed. But what do I think? Well, here's my ranking of the MCU's Phase 4. Hello and welcome to Cinemaze, and this is my ranking for Marvel's Phase 4. Going into this is just my opinion and based on my enjoyment of these projects. This may change over time, but right now, this is how I feel. Phase 4 has been super mixed, so I think everyone will have really different opinions here. So go ahead and let me know down below in the comments your rankings. With the introductions out of the way, let's get right into the ranking. Number 13. What If? Coming in last is What If, the MCU's first attempt at animation, and the animation here is really good. It's very fluid and it works well for the action and the stories they're telling. The problem is the episodes are very hit or miss. Some of them I think are great, like the Doctor Strange episode, while others don't land as well. The show also feels like it's missing an episode with the exclusion of the Gamora and Tony Stark plot, which wasn't finished in time. I think the show fails to bring the universes together effectively. It feels rushed and we don't get much of a team dynamic. The characters don't feel like they've earned their spot on the team, with Doctor Strange doing almost all of the work. I think this series didn't need the team up event and should have stuck to standalone stories, or it needed to devote more time to the team up. Overall, there's some fun here, but it doesn't leave much of an impact. Number 12. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. As a massive fan of Captain America Civil War, this was the Phase 4 project I was most looking forward to. I think out of all the Disney Plus shows, this one has the best action and a great soundtrack, bringing back composer Henry Jackson. I got invested in the arcs of Sam, Bucky and John Walker, but overall the ending felt rushed and gave itself too much to do. Sam had some great moments dealing with race in America and the weight of the mantle as Captain America, but when he picked up the suit, his speeches felt preachy and forced. Bucky had a great arc about PTSD and dealing with his past, but the resolution happens off screen, so the only arc that really lands is John Walker. The series felt focused on giving us big cliffhanger endings for each episode rather than focusing on the story itself. This series has a major villain problem. They try to make the villain sympathetic and relatable, which removes any sense of threat or urgency from the series, while the power broker twist feels blindingly obvious. Zemo is great fun, but ultimately his inclusion doesn't make sense for the story, so there's no real threat here. There's moments in this show to like, but ultimately it felt like it could have been a more effective film. Number 11. Eternals. When I first watched this in cinemas, I actually enjoyed this quite a bit. I liked the more serious tone, the beautiful cinematography, and the exploration into eternal life and humanity. After my first viewing, this would have placed much higher on this list, but once I returned to it a second time, it was a real chore to watch and it was hard to finish. When you know where the plot is going, it really drags, feeling long, emotionless and boring. I don't think it's the worst film in the MCU, but there's not much here to like either. Number 10. Hawkeye. Hawkeye is one of the more consistent MCU series. It's paced better, it doesn't shift tone too much, and it doesn't devolve into a big CGI ending. So it's great that it's consistent, but it's consistently fine. This series isn't trying to tell a groundbreaking story, and overall it's enjoyable. There's good action, great characters, and gives us some interesting character moments. But I don't feel motivated to watch this again. It's got a villain problem, baiting us to believe the villain is one person and later revealing it to be Kate's mother and the Kingpin. And while I'm so happy the Kingpin is back, I don't think he left much of an impact on this series. This one does the job, but again, I think it could be cut down into a really fun, punchy, fast-paced action movie focusing on Kate, Clint's past and the Kingpin. Number 9. Shang-Chi. This one's actually the opposite of the Eternals for me. When I first watched it, I really wasn't impressed. I thought it had forced MCU references and humour, and the final act devolves into a big CGI dragon fight, which felt like an even worse version of the already flawed Black Panther finale. However, when I rewatched it a second time, I actually enjoyed it a lot more, and it bumped up a few spots on this list. I found more meaning in the family dynamic with a fascinating villain. While I think the big CGI ending is bad, the action for the first half of the film is much more grounded, and the martial arts choreography is some of the best action in the MCU. When this movie focuses on character, family and grounded action, it's really strong, but the CGI fights and forced MCU connections lets this movie down. Number 8. Black Widow, one of the more controversial opinions on this list. I actually like Black Widow quite a bit. I think for the most part this film really works. Despite Natasha being dead, they made me care about her journey and her family in this film. I enjoyed the much darker, grounded tone and the exploration into who Black Widow is and her past. They introduce us to a few new interesting characters I want to see more of, and while they absolutely waste the villain of Taskmaster, both their personality and their powers, I think there's an interesting, disgusting, sexist, manipulative, unlikable villain here in Dreykov, and it all ties back to one line from the first Avengers film. The only criticism I have is that this movie came out 5 years too late. If this was released right after Civil War, I think it would have been an effective follow-up and would have been more well received. A decent film, just released in the wrong year. Number 7, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Marvel continues its trend of pushing the boundaries of the genre with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, giving us an MCU horror film, and for the most part, they don't hold back. This is as much a horror movie as the MCU will ever give us. You also feel the presence of director Sam Raimi giving his tone and flavour to the film. Wanda has a great journey and gives us a lot of madness. Where it fails is in the multiverse. For a movie with multiverse in the name, I don't think it explores the multiverse in an interesting way. We don't visit many universes and they don't seem particularly unique. The cameos are fun, but they don't push the story forwards, and ultimately, they feel like they were forced in here to try to please fans. This isn't the big multiverse event like the name suggests, but just a small glance into it. This movie is a ton of fun, with great direction and emotional moments, but felt like it could have been more. Number 6, Loki. Out of all the projects in Phase 4, Loki was the one I was least interested in, because I really felt like Loki's journey was done after Infinity War. Turns out, I actually enjoyed Loki quite a bit. I think one of its biggest strengths is that it uses being a TV show to its advantage. It doesn't just feel like a stretched out superhero movie like most of the Disney Plus originals, but more like episodes of Star Trek or Doctor Who, jumping around the galaxy in time. There's one filler episode, but other than that, they really got me on board with this character study of Loki, while introducing us to some other new interesting characters. I also appreciate that this show doesn't end in a big CGI finale, but with smaller character moments which have a big effect on the universe. Overall, Loki is a fun, unique show which serves as a character study into Loki and our first real entry into the multiverse, but it's very much a first half, ending on a cliffhanger. We haven't seen the ending to the character arcs of Loki, Sylvie or Mobius. So with a solid second season and seeing where their stories end, I can see this moving up in the ranking, but for now it's not complete enough of a story to land higher on my list. Number 5, Moon Knight. Moon Knight is a show absolutely carried by Oscar Isaac. Isaac gives one of the MCU's best performances here as both Stephen Grant and Mark Spector, bringing so much life to these personalities, making me care about them and making them feel like distinct characters. It also has a great supporting cast and villain. Each episode feels unique with slightly different tones or genres, ranging from a character study to a globe-trotting adventure to horror. This keeps the show feeling fresh. The show falls down in the final episode, resulting in a big CGI superhero fight, which is frustrating because the show had been working so hard to be unique. A great performance by Oscar Isaac with some emotional and epic moments, but a slightly disappointing ending. It feels so close to being brilliant. Number 4, Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel is a real breath of fresh air, introducing us to one of the most fun, energetic and youthful characters in the MCU. They really made this character work for me, along with her friends and family. The show was most interesting when dealing with her personal life, school and culture, and that's a real testament to the character work done here. The first 3 episodes were absolutely fantastic and used being a TV show to its advantage, giving us small, quiet moments of Kamala's life. The show began to slow down at episodes 4 and 5, spending too much time in the past without pushing the characters forward and losing that unique style of the show. But the finale is a great return to form and shows Kamala becoming the superhero. Despite lacking in the middle, this show gets so high on my list because I loved the performance by Iman Vellani and enjoyed the slower exploration into her life and culture. Kicking off the top 3 is WandaVision. I loved the week-to-week release of WandaVision. The mystery, the theorizing between each episode was so fun. While many of the shows feel like movies cut up over weeks, this feels like it's perfectly made for TV and uses that to its advantage, with both the references to other shows and the mystery. The 9-episode run gave it more time to play around and feel like a real show. The character arc Wanda is on here is super effective, and this show has that emotional punch which is missing from the rest of the Disney Plus originals. The mystery, the style, the characters, it all worked for me. Again, the only place this falls down is in that last episode, where it suddenly remembers it's a Marvel show and rushes the ending while forcing in a big CGI fight. I think this show would have benefited from a more character-based ending, similar to Loki. That said, the ending doesn't ruin the show for me because I love Wanda's journey and the uniqueness of the series. Really, it's those emotional moments that makes this series reach my top 3 of Phase 4. Number 2, Thor Love and Thunder. Another controversial opinion, but I really enjoyed Thor Love and Thunder. While the jokes didn't always land and the character of Thor could be too silly at times, what did land were the emotional moments. The love story between Jane and Thor, what Jane is going through and how her story ends, plus Gore's arc and how it parallels Jane's, all really worked for me. The humour never undercut the emotion and they gave those moments time to breathe, giving us some powerful emotional moments. And these moments are what sets this film apart. If the moments don't work for you, then this movie is going to be much further down this list. But for me, the emotion hit when it matters. That, plus some awesome characters, locations, and creativity puts this film in my number 2 spot. Coming in at number 1 is, of course, Spider-Man No Way Home. Honestly, No Way Home is the only Phase 4 project which has completely satisfied me so far. While I have some issues with the first 30 minutes of this film, with some decisions being made that I don't necessarily buy into, and rushing to get to the multiverse, when this movie hits its stride, it absolutely worked. This movie had a really impossible task which it managed to pull off, bringing back the past villains and past Spider-Man. I've always been a Spidey fan, and I've always loved the Amazing Spider-Man films, so bringing back Garfield and redeeming his character by saving MJ and redeeming him as an actor in the eyes of the fans was great to see, and it all works. And growing up with the Raimi films, of course it's amazing and nostalgic to see Tobey Maguire again, but it doesn't just rely on nostalgia. Tom Holland's Peter has an arc here. He goes through a journey and it's emotional and effective, and that really ties this movie and his whole trilogy together. We get some great action here, great villains, and at times a very emotional and mature story. Although it has some growing pains in the first act, it really works where it needs to. This is such a special movie, and it's the only Phase 4 project to fully live up to its potential, and it easily comes in at number 1. So that's my Phase 4 ranking. Overall, Phase 4 is pretty mixed, with a lot of decent projects but lacking that quality and finish that I expect from the MCU. They're all enjoyable, but most of them have fundamental issues, and these issues are repeated across the phase, like forced CGI endings, too much filler content, and over-reliance on MCU references and humour. No Way Home is the only project that fully lives up to the past Marvel phases, and I really hope Marvel begin to focus their series and films and address these common problems. These were super hard to rank because I think most of these projects fall into a similar category of good but flawed. I'd love to hear your rankings in the comments because I think there's going to be a lot of variation here. I hope you enjoyed my ranking. If you did, like the video, it helps me out so much, and be sure to subscribe because I release new videos every Friday. But for now, thanks for watching Cinemaze.